A cruise missile slams into a military compound, meters from a school full of children. The world's busiest international airport comes under drone fire. Oil prices surge past $100 a barrel. And a war that is barely 2 weeks old has already cost American taxpayers more than $11 billion. Tonight, the Middle East is at a breaking point, and the consequences are reaching every corner of the globe. This is Global News Radar. Let's get into it. Good evening. Welcome to Global News Radar. I'm bringing you a comprehensive look at the most critical stories shaping the world right now. Tonight, we have 6 major stories to cover. We begin with Iran launching drone strikes on Dubai International Airport, and the United Nations Security Council responding with a rare, near-unanimous demand for Tehran to stop attacking its Gulf neighbors. Then, a devastating revelation. A preliminary military investigation suggests the United States likely struck an elementary school in Iran due to outdated intelligence, killing more than 165 people, many of them children. We'll also break down the staggering financial cost of this conflict. The first 6 days of the war have already drained more than $11 billion from the Pentagon's budget. Next, we'll look at the global oil crisis that this war has triggered, with shipping lanes under attack and energy prices soaring to levels not seen in years. After that, we turn to the American homeland. A leaked memo from federal investigators warns that Iran may have explored launching drone strikes against targets in California from a vessel off the coast. And finally, a different story making headlines in Washington. Jeffrey Epstein's longtime accountant appears before Congress. There is a lot to cover. Let's begin. Our lead story tonight takes us to the Persian Gulf. Where Iran has dramatically escalated its retaliatory campaign against neighboring countries, striking near the world's busiest international airport and attacking commercial shipping across the region. On Wednesday, 2 Iranian drones hit near Dubai International Airport in the United Arab Emirates, wounding 4 people. Despite the attack, airport operations continued. Hours later, a luxury apartment tower in the Dubai Creek Harbor area was struck by another Iranian drone, sparking a fire that firefighters worked through the early hours of Thursday to contain. These were not isolated incidents. In Bahrain, an Iranian attack ignited a major fire on Muharraq Island, home to the kingdom's international airport and surrounded by jet fuel storage tanks. In southern Iraq, an attack on the port of Basra killed at least 1 person and forced the shutdown of all Iraqi oil terminal operations. And in Oman, crews battled fires at fuel storage tanks at the port of Salalah. The pattern is clear. Iran is systematically targeting energy infrastructure and transportation hubs across the Gulf, attempting to generate enough economic disruption to pressure the United States and Israel into ending the conflict. In response, the United Nations Security Council approved a resolution on Wednesday demanding that Iran halt what it called egregious attacks on its Gulf neighbors. The vote was 13-0, a rare show of near unity on the council. However, China and Russia, 2 of Iran's closest allies, abstained from the vote. Both nations called the resolution extremely unbalanced, arguing that it failed to acknowledge the American and Israeli strikes on Tehran that initiated the conflict. Russia's representative warned that the resolution could create the false impression that Iran launched unprovoked attacks. Why does this matter? Because Iran's strategy goes beyond military retaliation. Meanwhile, the humanitarian toll across the region continues to climb. In Lebanon, at least 634 people have been killed. Iranian authorities say more than 1,300 people have been killed inside Iran. This is a conflict that is widening by the day. We turn now to what may become the most consequential and controversial event of this entire conflict. A preliminary military investigation has found that the United States likely carried out a missile strike on an elementary school in Iran that killed more than 165 people, many of them young children. The attack occurred on the morning of February 28th, a Saturday, which is the first day of the school week in Iran. The building, known as Shajareh Tayyebe Elementary School in the city of Minab, was full of students when it was hit. The U.S. military relied on target coordinates provided by the Defense Intelligence Agency, but that data was outdated. The school building had once been part of a neighboring military compound, but the 2 sites were physically separated by a new wall back in 2017. The building's exterior walls were painted with bright murals vivid enough to be seen from space. The political fallout has been swift. More than 45 senators have sent a formal letter to the Secretary of Defense demanding answers. They want to know why the Pentagon's Civilian Protection Center of Excellence, an office specifically designed to prevent this kind of tragedy, had been significantly reduced in size. If confirmed, this would stand among the highest civilian casualty events caused by American military operations in the past 20 years. International law is clear. Schools are protected. As one senator put it, either we changed our traditional targeting rules, or we made a mistake. Either answer demands accountability. Wars are measured in many ways: in lives lost, in territory gained, in diplomatic consequences. But they are also measured in dollars. And the financial cost of the conflict with Iran is already staggering. Pentagon officials informed senators that the war cost at least $11.3 billion in its first 6 days alone. $5 billion of that was spent on munitions in just the opening weekend. Factoring in logistics, the ongoing daily expense is well above $1.5 billion. That is approximately $63 million per hour, every hour. All of this money is coming from existing Pentagon funds. This raises serious questions about sustainability. The United States currently maintains a national debt exceeding $36 trillion. Every billion spent here is a billion diverted from other priorities. The president says the U.S. has won the war, but Israeli officials signal operations will continue as long as necessary. What is the end game, and how much more will it cost to get there? This conflict is on track to exceed the first month of the Iraq invasion in a fraction of the time. The economic shockwaves of this conflict are now being felt far beyond the Middle East. Oil prices have surged past $100 a barrel, shipping lanes are under direct military attack, and the global energy market is scrambling to respond. Brent crude briefly topped $100 a barrel on Thursday. The American benchmark, West Texas Intermediate, climbed to approximately $92. This represents a massive increase in a single trading session. To understand why, we look at the Strait of Hormuz. Roughly 20% of all traded oil passes through this narrow waterway. Iran has effectively disrupted commercial traffic. Overnight, 3 more civilian ships were attacked. 2 oil tankers were struck off the coast of Iraq, and a container ship was hit near the strait itself. Maritime authorities are advising extreme caution. In response, 32 countries agreed to release a combined 400 million barrels of emergency oil reserves, the largest in history. The U.S. alone will release 172 million barrels. Analysts call this a temporary buffer rather than a lasting solution. The reality is this: strategic reserves are finite. If the Strait of Hormuz remains a conflict zone, the world could see sustained energy prices that drive inflation and slow economic growth across every major economy. This is no longer a regional crisis. It is a global economic event. While the war with Iran rages thousands of miles away, a leaked internal memo from federal law enforcement has raised questions about whether the threat could reach American soil. The memo, issued by a field office in Los Angeles, warned that Iran may have explored launching unmanned aerial vehicles from a vessel off the coast. The targets would be unspecified locations in California. Officials have moved quickly to downplay the significance, calling the warning not actionable and unverified. They emphasized that this type of information sharing is a routine precaution. California's governor stated that while there are no known imminent threats, the state remains prepared. Experts point to cyber attacks as a more likely form of retaliation on U.S. soil. This memo reflects the elevated threat environment of an active conflict. We shift now to Capitol Hill, where Jeffrey Epstein's longtime accountant, Richard Kahn, appeared before the House Oversight Committee in a closed-door deposition. Kahn told lawmakers he was completely unaware of Epstein's crimes during the 14 years he managed his finances. Kahn began working for Epstein in 2005 and was named a co-executor of his estate. Kahn identified 5 prominent clients who made payments to Epstein but testified he saw no transactions involving the current president. However, he admitted to facilitating a sham marriage and impersonating Epstein in bank communications. The committee's ranking Democrat called Kahn's claim of ignorance not credible. With Kahn's name appearing 50,000 times in DOJ files, the investigation into how institutions failed to stop Epstein continues. Let's step back now and look at the bigger picture. This 12-day-old conflict is reshaping the geopolitical landscape. While the U.S. claims to have dismantled Iran's military capability, Tehran is successfully disrupting global trade and energy markets. Oil prices, shipping routes, and the record reserve release are global economic events. The humanitarian dimension, with thousands dead and displaced, adds a layer of structural damage that may define the coming weeks. Before we go, let's recap. Iran drone strikes in the Gulf, the tragic school strike investigation, the $11 billion war cost, the global oil crisis, the Homeland Threat Memo, and the Epstein accountant's testimony. That is your global briefing for today. If you found this valuable, please subscribe to Global News Radar. Thank you for watching, stay informed, stay aware, and I'll see you in the next briefing.